Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. This is your host, Andy Curry. Welcome to the program today. People, I am fired up because I have on the line with me David Dye, who has been speaking professionally 20 years. The content he speaks on is really interesting. He works with leaders and teams to get to the top without losing their soul or their mind in the process. Frankly, I could use a little bit of that information myself. Now, David speaks in the U.S. and internationally. He is based out of Denver in the great state of Colorado. He has written 2 books. Actually, he's written 1 book, and he's co-authored one that's coming out in 2016. The first book he has written is called The 7 Things Your Team Needs to Hear You Say. And the book he's co-authoring with is called Winning Well, A Manager's Guide to Getting Results Without Losing Your Soul. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here. That's a long list of accolades. Did I get it right?
You sure did. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Well, David, tell us about your speaking business. Who are you speaking to, and what are you teaching them?
Absolutely. Well, I work primarily with frontline and middle-level managers, team leaders, executives, everybody with responsibility for people. Because if you're going to get anything done today, if it could easily be done by one person, it already happened. All the success that we need to make, all the forward progress today comes by working together. And that's not new, but some of the competitive pressures that we're under and some of the tensions we face and the kind of hyper data-driven environments that we're in, those things can feel very new and very stressful. And most people, most managers don't receive the training they need to thrive in those environments. And so that's where I come in with real practical tools, tips, advice, and I call it practical inspiration. So it is motivating, but my goal that everybody who walks out of any program I ever do or a book that they read is that they walk away saying, hey, I can do that. That's something I can do right now as soon as I get back to my team.
Fantastic. Now, here's something that really tweaks my ear. When you talk about without losing your soul or your mind in the
Sure.
process. About a year ago, I was talking to a friend who had his own little business making kitchen cabinets, and I said, how's it going? He says, I don't know. I think I'm going to close shop. He says, I'm getting close to retirement. And he says, I've just about lost my soul anyway doing it.
Mm.
So what do you mean when you say so they don't lose their soul or their mind? What's going on there?
Sure. Well, we are biologically wired when we're stressed out, when we get scared, when we're under pressure, just the way we're built. We go to our natural freeze, fight, or flight type of responses. Very normal, very natural, and we've seen those modeled by other leaders, by teachers, by our own parents. And I joke with audiences sometimes. I say, finish the sentence for me. I'm your mother. I brought you into this world, and
I'll take you out,
Exactly. And when you're sometimes in certain parts of the country, they'll complete that sentence and then say, I can make another one. I don't know. I know. I don't know exactly what that means, but it doesn't sound good, right?
Right.
So we have some of these kind of indoctrinated biological, sociological fear, control, pressure type of responses. And it's very normal that we go to those. And, I've worked with thousands and thousands of managers and leaders all over the country, internationally and the rest. And I've never met a single person who said, you know why I took this job? You know why I started this company? Because I want to hurt people. Now, I'm not saying there's not a psychopath out there somewhere, but for the most part, people who take the roles, who start their own companies, who are doing those things, do it for good reasons somewhere along the line. But once you get into those pressure situations, some of our natural tendencies to either rely on fear, on power and control, or else to do everything ourselves, either one of those end up disempowering other people. They end up compromising our own human relationships. And we get in a pretty isolated and bitter and desperate place. And the statistics and all the research tells us the same thing. Gallup organization, their research around employee engagement has consistently hovered around only a third of the workforce being engaged. The other 2/3 are just compliant or disengaged. And that's been around for several years now. It's been that way globally as well. But what they just did that was just fascinating to me was they studied the engagement levels of managers themselves and discovered, and I think this is where your friend comes in, that 2/3 of managers are not engaged in their work.
Mm-hmm.
And if the managers, the leaders of companies aren't engaged in what they're doing, how on earth can we expect anybody else to be? And so that level of managerial disengagement, to me, when we talk about losing your soul, that's what we're talking about, is you're compromising your own humanity. You're losing your connection to people. You're losing your connection to the meaning behind the work that you're doing. And you end up in just what we call a user mentality, where it's just about achieving results today. You start treating people as objects rather than as human beings. And that's what we mean by losing your soul.
This may be it's a good example. I think yesterday I was in Los Angeles and going through the security line, and the TSA member, he was just a robot. And I was, he was sort of directing traffic, and I stood where I thought I was supposed to stand, and I said, "Is this where I need to be?" And he was almost borderline rude, on what to do next. And no, he's not a manager, obviously, and stuff. But I think getting lost, losing your soul, I think that's definitely a great example.
Certainly, it's the zombification of people, and I have an article around avoiding the zombie apocalypse and maintaining results. You got to keep the humanity in the work. It's people who are doing things. And you lose that, you lose everything.
True, and I have to say there was another TSA guy walking around. He just seemed happy as a clam, and it's all in your attitude.
Yeah, I've seen fascinating TSA folks. Just using that as an example, the robots, and then others who just brighten everybody's day and make it an enjoyable experience.
Mm-hmm. Happy to have a job, I guess. There's a lot to it. But as far as when you're giving talks and stuff, what are the techniques you're giving to help people move past the, sacrificing your mind and your soul in the process?
Sure. One of the very first things that we talk about is what does the leadership mindset look like? And it really centers around using the word "and." Most of us, just again, as human beings and from a survival standpoint, we tend to separate things. Something is this or that. And so you find two types of leaders and managers out there, those that are focused primarily on results and those that are focused primarily on relationships. The results, people say things like, results are all that matter. It's the bottom line and that's that. And then the relationship people say, hey, wait a second, it's about, people need to feel good and so on. And the thing is, they're both right. And what we've discovered through all of our work over the years is that managers and leaders who sustain excellence and achieve excellent business performance over time, not just once, but over time, they do both of these things. They focus on leadership that's a product of results and relationships. So it's not an or, it's an and. And that's the starting mindset. And then there are various techniques and tactics and tips that you use to play that out. But that's my encouragement for any leader, any manager, every situation you go into. Carry one of those in each hand. How can I go into the situation to build results and improve my relationships?
Okay, fantastic. Now, one of the books you wrote, the first one, The 7 Things Your Team Needs to Hear You Say, seems to me that that's right along with the content that you're speaking on. Let's talk about your book a little bit.
Sure.
What are now? Give me a perspective on when you wrote this book. Were you one of the team members at one time, and you felt like these are things you need to hear people say, or is this information you've garnered over the years of working with people?
I wrote this book because I had been in the management training business for many, many years. I helped train managers in nonprofits and local organizations, in big corporations, everything in between, public, every sector you can imagine. And one of the things that struck me is that you can go into a bookstore and you can find tons of books on leadership theory and models and all the rest of it. And with all of that help that's available, people still struggle. And so I wanted to take the approach of what's the easiest, most straightforward way that we can help managers and leaders be effective at what they do. And so that's why I focused on what they say. So in the 7 things your team needs to hear you say, are very practical. These are the things that if you'll say these things, and then sometimes there's accompanying behaviors that go with them, you're going to start seeing more energized people, more productive people, people who will solve problems on their own, who innovate, and just who in general are achieving more results and feeling better about their work. And those are all things that leaders and managers want. So that was kind of the genesis for the approach that we took there.
And what is one of the things? Can you elaborate on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take, for instance, number 4. The fourth thing your team needs to hear you say are the words, how can I help? And sometimes when a manager is real overwhelmed, they'll think, oh my goodness, how on earth am I supposed to, find time to help my team when I don't have time to do my work? Well, in reality, asking how can I help will free you up to do more of the work that only you can do. The way it works is you ask, hey, how can I help? And you're listening for 3 things. The first one are places where they don't have the equipment or the skills that they need to do the job. And this is something a lot of people take for granted. For instance, I was working with a group of very, very bright engineers. They were developing equipment, software and hardware that's used by the military, by agricultural industry, petroleum, all different kinds of global applications. Very, very smart people, but they were in a mess with deadlines slipping and all the rest. Well, when we got in and did the investigation and took a look at what was going on, it came out that these very bright engineers, about half of them didn't know how to use a single button in their calendaring software on their computer. And all of the managers didn't want to try to say, hey, do you know how to use the software? Because they knew they were talking to very, very smart, bright engineers. So they made an assumption, and it didn't play out. Even bright people sometimes don't have the skills or training they need. So the first thing you're looking for is, do they have the skills and training they need? The second thing you're looking for is, are there any barriers or obstacles that are getting in the way of their performance? And sometimes, by the way, that can be you. I worked with a really fun leader who he went back, asked his team this question in the warehouse one day, and they said, how can you help? Steve, you can help by getting out of here and leaving us alone to do our work. You're a fun guy, but you end up being a distraction. Kind of a fun example there. And then the final thing you're looking for is, can you ask questions that help promote problem solving and critical thinking? More and more people are entering the workforce without critical thinking skills because we've learned you can always look up answers on Google.
Right.
Well, that's not always true in the workplace. So if you're going to have people who can solve problems, you're going to have to teach them how. And it's a pretty straightforward process. We go through in the book, and I've got handouts online and flowcharts and all the rest. It's very straightforward. You start by saying, well, what was your goal? What are you trying to do? What happened? What did you learn from what happened? Do you need any other skills or training? Get back to that. If the answer is no there, then you go on, well, what else do you think you might do? And you have them explore the consequences of each of those actions. If they say, I don't know, you ask a secret question. Listeners, you'll want to write this one down. The secret question is, when somebody says, I don't know, you ask, what might you do if you did know? And you ask it very sincerely, and it removes all of the obstacles, the analysis paralysis, or someone's just lazy. It lets them know they're not going to get off the hook, and you'll start seeing the person generate answers. Or if they truly don't know, then you'll know that as well, and you can get them the training they need. And so after they explore the consequences of the various options, then you ask, okay, so which of those options are you going to go with? And the whole way, they have done all their thinking for themselves. You haven't been the one doing the thinking or solving the problem for them. If they come 3 or 4 times and you run them through these questions, that's all it's going to take before they start saying, hey, you know what, I had this problem and I was going to bring it to you, but I ran through those questions that you were going to ask me anyway, and I solved it myself. So celebrate that. And then you might even say, hey, next time I have somebody come to my office who wants to ask a question, can I send them to you and you'll run them through those? And then you've got to buy one, get one free, because now you've built a leader who's going to be helping other people, and you've just freed up your time from 2 different folks who'd otherwise be relying on you for answers. So that's a real practical example of how can I help.
Fascinating. I love that. You've spoken to lots of people, since you've been speaking professionally for 20 years, and I'm sure there's a lot of events that stick out in your mind, but what one in particular sticks out in your mind where you felt you really made an impact, and what was it?
Oh, golly, there are many. One, I will tell you, was not where I had the impact directly, but it was the impact somebody had on me. Her name was Mary, And one of the things that I share in the 7 things is it's important to practice accountability and something along the lines of being clear that that will not happen here, and whether that is bullying or slacking or whatever it might be. She had been the vice president of a California technology company, a very large one that you would know the name of. And she came up afterwards and she said, David, I did 6 of the 7 things that you talked about really well. And I used to be the vice president in this particular company. I said, well, that's great. She said, I had trouble with the accountability piece. I said, well, you're not alone. Many people do. And she said, yeah, that's why I used to be the vice president. And I just want anybody that you talk with, please let them know how important it is to practice accountability, to practice the fact that we keep our agreements with one another, and that we don't allow people to slack and to slide, because when we do that, it tells the people who are performing that we don't value their performance, that we don't care about the fact that they're doing a good job. And in that conversation, it just really underscored for me the importance of part of being inspirational and motivational is creating an environment that honors our people. And part of that is making sure that we're keeping our agreements to do good work and that we are celebrating it when it does, and we're not allowing other people who aren't a part of that vibe to be there.
Fascinating. I've never heard it put that way. She's a wise lady. Well, David.
She was indeed.
How can people learn more about you should they want to hear you speak or to get you for coaching and such?
Yeah, absolutely. On the web at www.trailblazeinc.com. That's TrailBlazeinc.com. You can email me at david@trailblazeinc.com, and you can find 7 things your team needs to hear you say on Amazon.
Okay. Well, David, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing with us your information. That was fascinating.
My pleasure. And for everybody out there who is leading and managing, thank you for doing what you do. We need you, and the impact you have goes way beyond any of the products you make or any of the services you deliver. It's really about the impact of the people that you see and interact with every day. And that's where your real legacy is. So keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for leading well.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.